Okay, so campaign checklist for launching your campaign. There's several items that you need to make sure that you've done prior to launching your campaign, which this class has modeled you to complete these elements before submitting your final campaign. But let's pretend this is not a class situation. We're talking about, let's say you're talking about your first real job and you're supposed to launch a campaign within your office, and you're on your own. So the first step would be to definitely make sure that you have done your research. We're going to call this market research. So that would be the first thing that you need to check off your list. Have you done your SWOT analysis? Have you looked at who your target audience would be? Have you identified potential opportunities? Have you thought about how your target audience will respond? Do your content pieces suit the demographics of your audience? Are your chosen content topics likely to interest your audience? And have you selected the right type of media for your audience? If you're marketing to individuals in their 60s and 70s, there was one student that was working on a golf course campaign. Well, typically that might be older audience, maybe retirees. So they may not be on Snapchat. So you need to make sure you do your research to make sure that you're selecting the correct medium or the correct vehicle to get the information to your audience, which is also why narrowing your audience really matters, because when you narrow your audience, that's where you can figure out where you're going to place your content when you launch your campaign. Okay, so market research, check. Next, before you launch your campaign, you need to make sure that you have solidified your content. So you know what types of content you want to produce and where you'll release your marketing materials in order to best attract your target audience. You'll want to carry out a few final checks before setting your content pieces out into the world, before releasing your flyers, before getting out your brochures, before releasing your social media. Are your content pieces free from errors? So content needs to be proofed. There's nothing worse than sending out content and then realizing, oh my goodness, everything is misspelled. I used the wrong words. I didn't check this. There's grammar errors. Are your content pieces memorable, interesting, or different? If they look just like everything else, then you really did all this work for no benefit. You need to make sure that your content is engaging, it's exciting, it's something that people will want to actually look at. Do your content pieces incorporate a call to action? So a call to action is, what do you want people to do once they look at your materials? Do you want them to... Speaking of spelling errors, I almost misspelled that. Do you want them to, volunteer as a result of your campaign? Do you want them to book a stay at a hotel? Do you want them to join a campaign to help fishermen? Do you want them to sign a pledge? What is the call to action? What do you want them to do as a result of your campaign? So the content will need to be proofed, and then you need to make sure there's a call to action. So I'm going to put a big check here. All of those things need to be addressed before you can actually launch your campaign. Your website. Think about your website as your house for your campaign. And you want to make sure it's really cleaned up. You wouldn't have a bunch of people over to your house and hopefully have items all over the floor and dishes in the sink and things like that. So with your website, you don't want broken links. You don't want your website to be too small in terms of your bandwidth. You don't want to have a lot of response and then the website crash. If you think back to when President Obama launched his insurance, call it Obamacare, for the purposes of this, the site crashed because they weren't prepared for the amount of volume of users, so it kept crashing for a couple of days. So you need to make sure that your website is built to handle those new customers or those new visitors. Do you have a system in place, right, website, to engage new content marketing visitors? If you have, for example, if you haven't put an email newsletter into place, do so before launching your content. So not only are they going to get your website, they can also, if you go to blogs, they have a lot of times where it's like, sign up for our weekly newsletter or sign up for tips and tricks. So have the multiple ways that they can engage. Put your Twitter feed on there, put whatever you want to get them to other areas online. That needs to be all situated within your website and make sure it's ready to go. You don't want to create a newsletter after you've launched your campaign because you're going to lose a lot of your initial excitement of people going to the website. So make sure you have your other directions that you want to go ready. Your social profiles, I kind of touched on this, but you should have them ready. Make sure that, do you make a regular effort to engage? So do you have your social media calendar, content calendar ready? Make sure you have your calendar so you know when your posts are going to be ready. When I'm talking about content calendar, you're specifically putting, okay, on Tuesdays, Thursdays, we're going to post these specific things on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Are they up to date and in style? Make sure that you're using good pictures, that you have a bank of pictures that are good to use. You don't want to try to wing your social media after your campaign has been launched. You want to have a bank of photos ready to go, and you want to have content developed so that you can get through your campaign on social media without running out of content. So that's a lot, but if we look at this, so you've got your market research, you've got your content. This also includes all of your marketing materials, your website, your social media calendar. So all of this that we just discussed has to do with your campaign and getting it ready to go. This is really important before you actually launch your final campaign. And in this class, you're not going to actually launch your campaign. Some of you have indicated that you would like to. But for the purposes of this class, we're kind of getting to, if you're going to, have your launch date here, you're going to be just on the side of the launch date. You guys aren't going to actually launch your campaigns during the portion of the class. You're preparing this to be launched by someone else. So in theory, when you get done, your campaign plan should be so foolproof and so ready to go that you could hand off the packet to someone else and say, okay, here you go. Here you can launch this campaign. So that's really what you're getting at. Those of you who are wanting to actually use your campaign, you need to think about all this prior to sending your campaigns out to be launched.